Hello, I'm Becky and I'm here just to talk you through some of the stuff that we covered at the Space-Tech Meets Agri-Tech event, which ran in January 2023. So generally really positive actually. There is a lot of interest in the space sector in the UK. There are spaceports being built around the country, or countries, Scotland as well. There's a lot of regional clusters that are developing with different expertise across space tech. And there are some really interesting plans for the east of England. So the new Anglia LEP sponsored this event because they are developing a regional space sector plan. And they're also bringing together a cluster group. So there's already quite a lot of stuff going on in the east of England. So trying to bring that bit together. There's a microgravity test facility who we're going to hear from later. There's also work on a Satellite Applications Catapult hub in the local region, and it's all kind of feeding into that net zero plan for the region. So that was just really exciting. Quite a lot of things happening in this space and in our region as well. We then had a space safari, so we had 6 presenters, and I have lined up some quick 1-minute videos from each of them to say who they are and basically what they were there to talk about, kind of the technologies they've got and the things they're working on that are super exciting. I'll hand you over to them now.
Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm a postdoctoral research associate at the University of Lincoln. I'm here today to talk about some of the capabilities that space can provide to us in the agri-food technology sector, particularly as it relates to our robotic systems. But also, it was really nice to come here today and share what agriculture can help provide to the space sector in terms of a real test bed for some exciting use of robots and space, the communication between the two.
Christina, my name is Aldina Franco. I am a researcher at the School of Environmental Sciences at UEA. And I'm here today to introduce the tracking systems I have been developing. I have been working with tracking devices that enable me to track wildlife, but also livestock. And the reason why I was here today was because I am trying to develop collaborations with people interested in developing livestock tracking systems. So for instance, these are examples of tracks of storks that I've followed as they moved across Europe to Africa, and we basically track all they do and we track their paths during migration. Now, the reason I have started working with a new long-range wireless device is because it's a smaller device, needs less power, and I can develop a smaller tracking device. I am really enthusiastic about these new devices because the range of these gateways is incredible. The long-range wireless, the LoRa devices, can transmit data up to 40 kilometers in a very reliable way. And I can develop 5-gram devices that can be placed on ear tags, for instance, both for sheep or cows, and basically also in collars. And I have the technology ready now to be able to track a diversity of animals.
Hello, my name is Nima. I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Agtelligence. Agtelligence has been developing FarmScore. FarmScore uses satellite imagery to score sustainable farming system. And this score can be used by organization who wants to support sustainable farming system.
So I'm Brian Jelinski-Smith. I'm the Technical Services Director here at Gravity Lab, and I'm here to talk about basically the cross-collaboration that we can have between the Agri-Tech sector and the Space-Tech sector. So what we're doing is we're offering microgravity as a service to anybody who requires a testing environment within a microgravity or a space environment, and that can be done through either terrestrial based applications or through a rocket for space access. And we are basically offering a lab in space to deliver that environment, to unlock the countless potentials that you can have by testing within a microgravity environment. And that could be anything from understanding the way that proteins can develop, how basic physical fundamentals can happen, how sedimentation happens, how buoyancy happens. All of these things have an impact because we are removing that one element from the lab, and that is, of course, gravity.
Ian Parry, I'm a co-founder and director of a company called Super Sharp Space Systems. We're developing unfolding space telescopes for Earth observation. So looking down at the ground from about 450 kilometres up. And our technology works in the thermal infrared, and we believe that it has some very useful applications for Agri-Tech. So that's why I've come here, to show people who work in that sector what we can do, and hopefully they'll go, that's cool, we want that.
So our first speaker was Sonia from the Satellite Applications Catapult, and she kind of talked us through how satellite and space technology, they're enabling technologies, you know, they kind of underpin some of the stuff that we want to do, and then obviously how that applies into agriculture. Well, her general gist was the Internet of Space is coming. So what this really means is that costs are coming down. It's cheaper to launch satellites into space, it's cheaper to access the technology, and it's more accessible basically for everybody. And that's kind of what's driving this new trend into space technology and the interest in it. Something that I thought was really interesting that she talked about, I think I've got a slide I can show you, is the connectivity bubble for your farm, was what she was talking about. So you can have your own private network across your farm, and you can also then control the data that's coming in and out of that network. So it's kind of isolated private network for your farm. That's sort of what we're working towards here. And the reason why that might be doable is because in the near future, we're going to have more satellites again, because the cost is going down. We can have more of them. More satellites means lower cost for you to use them. And you'll also get better and more frequent data as well. There's also kind of lower orbits being used than previously. So that means better quality data transfer. So you can have higher res images, for example, or closer images as well. But it'll also be lower latency, so it'll be quicker to transfer between the two, so you can make real-time decisions rather than get the images back, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks later when it's perhaps not that helpful to you anymore. She also talked about satellite data just being one data point, and it does need ground truthing. It can only tell you so much. You will still need on-farm sensors or other insights that you might be getting from all over the place, but you know, it's an important data point that you could use for all kinds of different applications. So some of the applications that she did talk us through, some of them, you know, in the future, nearer future, there's potential for organic crop verification using satellite indicators, so you can, you know, see, validate the fact that you are farming organically. We could do field variability assessments, which might inform how or what you invest in terms of precision agriculture. Grass and grazing management as well, something that I know we've talked about before. You know, monitoring where the best places are to graze at what time of year and all that kind of stuff. And even going into things like water quality monitoring, biodiversity monitoring, stuff to support elms delivery, really. So there's quite a lot of options of where we could be going, and that's why space tech is relevant to the agriculture sector. So our second speaker was Emmanuel from the Space Cooperative Europe. They are the first co-op that are dedicated to space and space commercialization. So it was a really interesting discussion we had with him. There are kind of 3 key areas that this co-op are focusing on, and one is obviously agriculture. There's also advanced materials and life sciences as well. And obviously for the purpose of this discussion, we'll focus on the Agritech, but it's kind of interesting to see what else is kind of relevant to space sector. So he was talking about the opportunity to conduct experiments on the International Space Station. So it's kind of interesting to run projects in the ISS because there's different parameters that you get in space. So for example, he's talking about faster aging. So you could compare what happens on the ISS compared to what happens on Earth and how that kind of affects, for example, how plants are growing, all that kind of stuff. So it's super interesting. You could also attach a sensor to the ISS. So you get kind of new vantage point of what you're doing on Earth, basically. Yeah, really interesting. So Space Co-op launched a European call for co-funded projects, and they've they had quite a good response from around Europe. There were, I think, 5 from the UK. And they've narrowed those down to 21 projects, which are then being worked through to implementation and basically getting them on the ISS. Takes a bit of time, but it's kind of interesting to see all the different projects that they might be working on the ISS. But it is quite clear that this is not about growing lettuce for Mars, living on Mars, for example. He talked quite a lot about these experiments having a real impact back on Earth. That's what it's for, is to help us to address the challenges that we have today on planet Earth, which I thought was super interesting. And he was talking about the co-op's role in trying to translate the goals that we have in agriculture, things that we need to achieve, into those projects that we can run with the Space Co-op support. So kind of watch this space on this one, but certainly opportunities to try out new things in the space sector to help us grow food better here in the UK or anywhere on Earth. Our third speaker was Jodi from Citicourt and Co. And she was giving us a bit of a kind of finance overview of what's going on in this space sector with relevance to agriculture. So she gave us some super interesting facts. I thought there were loads of interesting facts, but the key ones I picked out was that the space sector has actually tripled since the year 2000. Something that I did not know is that the UK is the second largest manufacturer of small satellites globally. So there's loads of stuff going on here in the UK and we're all super interested in it, but actually private investment into this area is actually relatively small. So there's more we can be doing here. We need a bit more support. And actually on that, traditionally the funding is largely coming from government and in grants, that kind of stuff. But it might be beneficial if we could do some match funding with government and private sectors to kind of just start getting things moving in that. Jodi really talked us through quite a lot of statistics and some super interesting graphs around where investment was going, the investment trends in agriculture generally, as well as in space, and some of the barriers that we had to getting more investment in this area. The primary one that she covered was around private funders actually not knowing enough about the space sector. I mean, I didn't know we manufacture all those satellites. So perhaps there's a real need here to try and educate investors about the opportunities in this area, but also trying to show the positive impact that the tech from the space sector can have on farms. So, trying to identify investment in this area is what's it going to do on your farm? How is it going to improve profitability or productivity, sustainability, all those good things? Making that connect between the tech and the changes we want to make on our farms. So something that Jodi did show us was that the biggest investments in agriculture in the last few years from the private sector have been into AI, big data and digitalization. So if we can show perhaps how space technology can support these elements that are being invested in, that might give us some more opportunity to raise a bit more private investment for the space technology. And obviously earlier in this, we kind of talked briefly on some of the opportunities that these technologies could have on farm, on agriculture. So sounds like we got some work to do to get these, to get a bit more excitement around space tech and the investment into space tech. Okay, so I hope that was a super helpful whistle-stop tour of Space-Tech Meets Agri-Tech. I think probably watch this space is a terrible pun, but it's a good thing to do. We have got another event coming up later this year, looking at Earth observation technology kind of from the other way, from the farm up rather than space down. But some really interesting technologies and really interesting opportunities to get involved with the UK space tech. So if you did miss connecting with anybody or you want to connect up with some of the speakers, please let us know and we will put you in touch. Thank you very much.